All right, so we're diving into Unicity Science today.
Hmm.
You guys have sent over a ton of info, their website, articles, you name it, and want the full rundown. Is Unicity legit for better health or just really good at marketing? Let's dig in.
It's a great question and one we hear a lot. There's definitely no shortage of noise in the health and wellness world these days.
Tell me about it. Everyone seems to have a magic solution.
Right, and that's why we're here to cut through the hype. Unicity's got some bold claims, and we need to see if they're backing them up with solid science or just clever slogans.
Yeah, and they've definitely got that whole motivational vibe going on. Their tagline alone, obsessed with making life better. I mean, who isn't, right? But then they hammer on about innovative, science-based products and this metabolic health thing. Is that the real deal or just another buzzword?
Well, it's a bit of both, honestly. Metabolic health has definitely become a buzzword, but it's also a genuine area of increasing interest in the medical community. Think of it like this. Metabolic health is how well your body's engine is running.
Okay, I like that analogy. So it
Mhm.
impacts what, like energy levels and how your body uses food.
Exactly. And it even plays a role in your risk for chronic diseases down the line. But that doesn't automatically mean Unicity has it all figured out, of course. Science-based is another one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot.
Oh, I know. Like my scientifically designed morning coffee just means I add creamer.
Right. We've got to see if Unicity's version of science-based holds up under scrutiny.
Okay, good point. And it looks like they're trying to get ahead of that skepticism with their whole three pillars thing. Scientifically designed, rigorously tested, and masterfully produced.
Catchy.
For sure.
Hmm.
But are we buying it? Let's start with scientifically designed. What does that even mean in the supplement world? Are we talking actual labs and researchers or just some folks mixing ingredients in their basement?
That's the million-dollar question. It's not enough to just throw a bunch of trendy ingredients together and hope for the best. Legitimate companies invest in real research and development. They look at existing studies, run their own clinical trials, have experts formulate their products.
So are they walking the walk or just talking the talk? How do we know?
Transparency is key. They need to be upfront about their processes. Do they mention published studies, collaborations with any universities? Even just being open about their sourcing and formulation is a good sign.
Makes sense. Okay, next pillar, rigorously tested. They made a big deal about quality control, from raw ingredients to the final product.
That's absolutely crucial, and you'd be surprised how many companies skimp in this department.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Ever heard of a supplement working differently depending on when you bought it? Could be inconsistent production. Rigorous testing should mean each batch is held to the same standard for purity, potency, you name it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So how can our listeners tell if a company's serious about quality testing? What should they look for?
Good question. Third-party certifications are a great place to start. Things like GMP certification. Right, it stands for Good Manufacturing Practices, basically. A stamp of approval that they're following industry standards. Unicity mentions having this on their site.
Okay, so that's a point in their favor.
Potentially. We'd need to dig a little deeper to see how their certifications stack up against others in the industry. Don't forget, anyone can slap a fancy-sounding certification on their website. It's the substance behind it that matters.
Totally. Marketing fluff? We see right through you. Okay, last pillar. Masterfully produced. They seem pretty proud of the fact that they handle their own production. No outsourcing here.
Yep, they really emphasize that, don't they?
Yeah, even going as far as saying they own every step of the process, ensuring unmatched quality. But is that really such a big deal? I mean, isn't outsourcing pretty standard?
It is, and for a lot of companies, it comes down to cost cutting. But there can be advantages to having tighter control over your supply chain. Unicity's argument is that it allows them to maintain higher quality standards and address any issues more quickly.
Hmm, interesting. So there are pros and cons to each approach, but does it actually translate to a better product for the consumer?
That's what we need to find out. And luckily, Unicity actually addresses some common consumer questions head on in their FAQs.
Oh yeah, they do have a pretty extensive FAQ section.
Which, by the way, is a good sign. It shows they're at least paying attention to what people are asking. And one thing that caught my eye was their response about maltodextrin.
Oh yeah, that was a whole thing a while back. Everyone freaking out about maltodextrin being in everything.
Right, and Unicity actually had a question about why it's used in some of their products.
Which, I'll admit, made me a little wary. But they did try to explain their reasoning.
They did. And this is a great example of how we can't always jump to conclusions based on a single ingredient. The type of maltodextrin matters.
Okay, so break it down for us. What's the deal with this ingredient?
So there's regular maltodextrin, which breaks down quickly in your body and can cause those blood sugar spikes people worry about. But Unicity uses something called resistant maltodextrin.
Resistant. So it, like resists being digested.
Basically, it acts more like a fiber passing through without being fully broken down.
So instead of spiking your blood sugar, it just cruises on through.
Exactly. And it can even have some benefits like promoting good gut bacteria and improving how your body responds to insulin. The takeaway here is that seeing maltodextrin on an ingredient list isn't an automatic red flag. It's about knowing the type and the context.
It's like the whole good fat versus bad fats thing. Context is everything.
100%. And this actually brings up a much bigger point about how we approach health information in general. It's so easy to get caught up in fear-mongering and oversimplification, but the reality is often much more nuanced.
That's why we do these deep dives. We want to give our listeners the tools to think critically about all the health info they're bombarded with. And speaking of thinking critically, another FAQ that stood out to me was about how dietary supplements are regulated in the U.S.
Yeah, good one. Because that can be a confusing topic.
To say the least. It always feels a bit like the Wild West to me.
And honestly, it kind of is. It's a surprisingly complex issue. But in a nutshell, supplements are regulated under something called DSHEA.
Hold on. That sounds like something out of Star Wars. What is DSHEA?
I know, right? It stands for the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. Basically, it's the law that governs supplements. And unlike medications, supplements don't need pre-approval from the FDA before they hit the market.
Wait, really? So companies can just put anything in a bottle and start selling it?
Not quite. While they don't need pre-approval, they still have to follow labeling and manufacturing guidelines. And the FDA can step in if a product is found to be unsafe or mislabeled. We've seen it happen too.
Okay, so there are some guardrails in place.
Exactly, but it also means a lot more responsibility falls on the consumer to do their research.
So we can't just assume a company is on the up and up just because their website looks nice or they use a lot of scientific terms.
That's exactly it. It all comes down to doing your homework. Don't just take their word for it. Look for those third-party certifications we talked about. Read reviews from trusted sources. Even talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian if you're unsure about something.
Solid advice. So we've talked about their marketing, their manufacturing, their quality control. Now let's see if their products live up to the hype.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because Unicity hangs their hat on this idea of a holistic approach to health and wellness. More than just supplements, they're promoting a whole lifestyle shift.
Right. Not just popping pills, but making bigger changes. But we've heard that before. How do we know they're not just jumping on the holistic bandwagon?
Well, we need to look at the bigger picture. Do their products and programs genuinely reflect that holistic philosophy, or are they mostly focused on specific areas?
In other words, are they walking the walk?
Exactly. And that's where you, as the consumer, have the power. We've given you the tools to think critically about Unicity's claims. Now, you get to decide if their products are the right fit for your needs.
So stay tuned, folks. We're about to dive into the nitty-gritty of Unicity's product lineup to see if it lives up to the hype. So we're really putting this whole holistic thing to the test. But first, before we get to the actual products, I wanted to circle back to Unicity's FAQs. They have some interesting stuff in there about their manufacturing process.
Definitely. And I think it's smart of them to address those questions head on, get ahead of any concerns people might have.
Right, like be transparent about what goes on behind the scenes. And one thing that really jumped out at me was, well, their answer about sourcing ingredients from China.
Oh, yeah. That's always a hot topic in the supplement world. People get a little hesitant when they see made in China on the label.
For sure. And to be honest, I was a little surprised to see that Unicity sources some of their ingredients from there.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, though. A lot of companies, even big names you'd recognize, source at least some ingredients globally. It often comes down to, availability and cost.
Okay, so that makes sense from a business perspective. But what about quality? How can they assure customers that these ingredients meet their standards, especially with all the, regulations and stuff?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. And Unicity says they have strict quality control measures in place, regardless of where the ingredient comes from. They talk about third-party testing, audits of their suppliers.
So they're basically saying, don't freak out, we've got this covered.
Chuckles. Well, they probably phrase it a little more elegantly than that. But yeah, the message is that they're not just taking these suppliers at their word. They're doing their due diligence to ensure everything meets their standards.
Okay, so that's reassuring, I guess. But it does make you wonder, If they're so committed to this whole masterfully produced thing, why not just source everything locally?
It's a good question, and there's no easy answer. It could be like certain ingredients are just more readily available or more cost-effective from specific regions. And remember, they do emphasize owning every step of the production process, even if they're not sourcing every single ingredient locally.
True, true. Okay, so maybe made in China isn't always a reason to run for the hills, but it still comes down to trust, right? Trusting that Unicity is doing what they say they're doing.
Absolutely. And that's where that third-party verification comes in. It's not just Unicity saying, hey, trust us. They're getting independent confirmation that they're meeting certain standards.
Right, that's what those certifications are all about. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about another interesting tidbit from their FAQs. This one's about the environment. Sustainability is a big deal these days, and Unicity actually had a question about their commitment to eco-friendly practices.
Oh, yeah. That's becoming increasingly important to consumers. People want to know that the companies they're supporting are environmentally responsible.
Exactly. So what kind of practices are we talking about here? What does Unicity say they're doing to reduce their environmental impact?
Well, they mentioned a few things. One is their packaging. They're apparently transitioning to more sustainable
Okay,
materials.
like less plastic, more recyclable stuff.
Exactly. They're also talking about reducing waste in their manufacturing process and looking for ways to make their shipping and distribution more efficient, reduce their carbon footprint.
It's kind of a lot to wrap your head around, all the different factors that go into making a company truly sustainable.
It really is. It's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of small changes that add up over time. And to Unicity's credit, they do seem to be taking a multifaceted approach.
Okay, so it seems like they're making an effort, at least on the environmental front.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things where you have to kind of take their word for it to
Huh.
some extent.
To a certain extent, yes. But you can also look for evidence to back up their claims. Do they have any certifications or partnerships with environmental organizations? Have they won any awards for their sustainability efforts? That kind of thing can help you gauge how seriously they're taking it.
Good point. It's all about connecting the dots, seeing if their actions match their words. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Sourcing ingredients, manufacturing practices, sustainability, and now it's time for the main event. Let's take a closer look at what Unicity is actually selling.
Let's do it. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the products themselves, right? Do they deliver on their promises? Are they truly designed with a holistic approach in mind?
And are they worth your hard-earned money? We're about to find out. All right, time to talk products. Unicity has quite the lineup, everything from weight management to gut health to energy drinks. Where do we even begin?
Well, it's helpful to remember that Unicity really emphasizes their science-backed approach. They want customers to feel confident that these products are, more than just hype.
Right, they're putting a lot of emphasis on research and clinical trials. But do they actually share that research publicly? Like, can we see these studies?
Some companies are better about that than others. It's always a good sign when a company is transparent about their research. They might have a science or research section on their website where they link to studies or provide summaries of their findings.
Okay, so transparency is key. What about the products themselves? Anything in their lineup that really stands out to you, either positively or negatively?
Well, one that's been getting a lot of buzz is their Balance product. It's designed to support healthy blood sugar levels.
Which is a big deal, right? Especially with so many people struggling with blood sugar issues these days.
Exactly. And what's interesting about Balance is that they've done some clinical trials on it, and the results have actually been published in peer-reviewed journals.
Oh, wow. So they're putting their money where their mouth is, research-wise.
It seems that way. Now, that doesn't automatically mean it's a miracle product or anything. We always have to remember that everyone's body is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Totally. And it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor before starting any new supplement regimen. But it's definitely interesting to see a company investing in legitimate research like that.
It is, and I think it speaks to their commitment to, moving beyond just marketing claims and actually trying to make a difference.
Okay, so Balance is one to watch. Any other products pique your interest?
Their gut health products are worth a look, too. They have a whole line dedicated to supporting the microbiome.
Which, again, is huge right now. Everyone's talking about gut health.
Right.
But what sets Unicity's products apart? Are they using any unique ingredients or approaches?
Well, they talk a lot about using prebiotics and probiotics in their formulas.
Okay, and those are? Remind me again.
Right. So probiotics are the good bacteria that live in your gut, and prebiotics are like the food that helps those good bacteria thrive.
Ah, okay. So it's like feeding your gut the good stuff so it can flourish.
Exactly. And having a healthy balance of gut bacteria is linked to, well, all sorts of benefits: improved digestion, boosted immunity, even better mental clarity.
It really does all come back to gut health, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And Unicity seems to be tapping into that growing awareness with their gut health line.
Okay, so we've got blood sugar support, gut health. What about energy and focus? Because Unicity also has a few products in that realm, right?
They do. And this is where things get a little bit more into the, shall we say, gray area of supplements.
Oh, how so?
Well, some of their energy products contain nootropics.
Now, there's a word I've heard thrown around a lot lately, nootropics.
Those are like brain boosters, right?
Exactly. They're compounds that are supposed to enhance cognitive function, things like memory, focus, creativity, that kind of thing.
Sounds almost too good to be true. But do they actually work?
That's the million-dollar question, and the research is still emerging. Some nootropics have shown promise in clinical trials, while others, not so much. And there can be side effects, depending on the specific nootropic and the dosage.
Okay, so it's not as simple as just popping a pill and suddenly becoming, like, a genius. Not quite. And this is where it's really important to do your homework. If you're considering a nootropic supplement, research the specific ingredients, look for reputable brands, and start with a low dose to see how your body reacts.
Solid advice, because when it comes to our brains, we don't want to mess around.
Yeah.
All right, so Unicity's product lineup has a little something for everyone, it seems, from blood sugar support to gut health to energy and focus. But it sounds like the real takeaway here is,
Do your research. Don't just take a company's word for it, no matter how convincing their marketing might be. Look for that transparency we talked about, check for third-party certifications, and most importantly, listen to your body.
absolutely, what works for one person might not work for another, and there's no magic bullet when it comes to health and wellness. So there you have it, folks, our deep dive on Unicity science. We've covered a lot of ground today, from their marketing claims to their manufacturing processes to their commitment to science and sustainability. But the real journey starts now, as you take this information and decide for yourself if Unicity's products are the right fit for your individual needs and goals. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.